This call is being recorded.
Hey gang, this is Mark Barsotti. Very pleased today to be talking with the excellent writer Paul DiFilippo, mostly known for science fiction. Paul, thanks for chatting with me today.
Oh man, this is my pleasure. We've been buddies for a long time, but I don't think we've certainly never had a face-to-face meeting, and that's something to much be anticipated. But this is a pretty good substitute.
Absolutely. So the late great Harlan Ellison said of you, DiFilippo is like gourmet potato chips to me. I can never eat just one of his stories. William Gibson called your book, the Steampunk Trilogy, spooky, haunting, hilarious. The Washington Post called you an insightful, skillful, joyful writer. Your work has been praised by the likes of Samuel Delany and Brian Aldiss, among others. You've been nominated for over 50 literary awards. Given all that, Paul, how do you account for your somewhat underwhelming public profile, or are you beyond thinking about stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a mystery, but it's not a thorn in my side. It's just that some writers seem to strike a popularity chord that other writers just don't hit for one reason or another. I mean, Bruce Sterling once told me, he said, there are 10,000 Bruce Sterling fans in the universe, and that's as high as I'll ever go. And I always kept that maxim from Bruce in mind. It's no shame to have a smaller audience, especially if they're fervent and smart and dedicated, and you just can't manufacture the kind of popular success that somebody like Gaiman or Gibson or pick your own name. You can't manufacture that intentionally. It has to arise organically, and sometimes it's a matter of the zeitgeist. Somebody fits in with the zeitgeist and explodes, and other times, it's the
well, not everyone can write 50 Shades of Grey, after all.
Right, there you go. So, when I look at some of the stuff that has become immensely popular, it's like, God, I'm blessed. I don't have to. My name is not associated with 50 Shades of Grey, or So I'm kind of in the Bruce Sterling camp. If there are 10,000 or 9,000 or 6,000 DiFilippo readers out there, then I'm perfectly happy. And my ever-loving wife Deborah earns probably the lion's share of our income, and if I can push on doing what I'm doing and contribute at least a little to the household budget, then that's fine by me. So.
Sure.
But sometimes I think there is a natural inclination. You read a story that won an award or is being talked about, and you say, "Damn, I've got something out there on the same theme that I think is at least as good."
Better.
Or better, and it kind of went unnoticed. And but sometimes, like for instance, my novella from PS Publishing, Aeota, AEOTA, I think that is phenomenal, but it just came and went and sank without a notice. And it's a small PS Publishing. It's a very, very fine small press, but they're not Knopf or HarperCollins or whatever, and so the book is just not going to get the distribution that it might otherwise. So it's a kind of career thing that that you just have to live with if you've been, I consider career perseverance almost as important as instant and perhaps fading celebrity. I've been doing this, my first sale was 1977, so I'm coming up on the 50th anniversary at this crazy game.
Wow.
And just to last that long, I think, is some kind of tribute and testament too, because when you look at the history of science fiction, it's littered with people who were shining stars and
flamed out,
and they flamed out, and that's okay. I'm sure they've gone on to wonderful, fulfilling lives, but they didn't stick with the career that they initially probably invested a lot of hopes in, and so in any case, I'm kind of content where I am, just as long
Sure.
as somebody's willing to buy the next book and give it a little word of mouth, and then I'm happy.
And consider if the last 20, 30 years you've been playing on a Scrooge McDuck pile of cash and coins, you probably would have been writing a lot less.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I will say in a more just universe, you would be a star writer, or at minimum a Jupiter-sized gas giant.
Yeah,
well,
I could be.
Let's go.
I could certainly be a gas giant just by sheer volume of mass here.
Well, let's go back to the beginning, Paul. What's the first fiction you remember writing?
Well, if you're going to be highly specific, the first fiction I wrote was about 2 pages in 1965. I still have this. I got to dig it out. It's buried somewhere in the morass here, but I looked at it a few years ago. It's 2 pages laboriously typed out on my mother's typewriter, which was a Man from U.N.C.L.E. adventure. If you actually, it was like the prologue, and I never took it any further. I think I actually digitized it and put it on my old blog once, so I should probably it's probably pretty easy to find the digital version of it. But so this is, when Man from U.N.C.L.E. was big, 65, 66, I was totally in love with the show.
You would have been 11, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was totally in love with the show, and I don't know what motivated me to write it. I was reading, it wasn't just the show. There used to be a Man from U.N.C.L.E. magazine, a digest-sized magazine, and I had a subscription to it. And more familiar, the Man from U.N.C.L.E. paperbacks written by like Michael Avalone and a bunch of other, work for hire type guys. And I just consumed all that prose stuff as well as the show, and something said, it caused me to try to emulate it or see what I could do, and that was a journey right there. And then into high school, working for the high school newspaper, and finally just in college saying, maybe I could do something at a professional level, and selling that first story in 77.
Excellent. So, when did you know or decide that you were serious about being a writer? And I know there's beyond the theory that writers are born not made, but when did you decide that you were going to seriously pursue it? Well,
here's the thing. So I left college without graduating, and I had sold this short story, but I didn't have the chops or the ambition or anything to really pursue it. Beyond that, I just regard it as kind of a fluke. And I got this great job as a programmer. I was in IT, believe it or not, and the programming language that we used was the not a sexy one. It was the antiquated and very clunky COBOL. And I made my share of year 2000 time bombs, because we had 2 positions for the date field, the year field,
right.
And so I contributed plenty of those. And programming actually, even though it wasn't like programming video games or anything, I was working for Blue Cross, so it was programming claims processing. And programming was actually very similar to writing in a way. I'm sure I'm not the first to say that. It involved creativity and putting things in sequence and repairing your mistakes and stuff. So I got a big kick out of programming, but that lasted about 3 years. And then I said, and of course I was making more money than I've ever made since. It was a decent paycheck. But after about 3 years of programming, I said to myself, I once had dreams. I remember I wanted to be a science fiction writer, and I sold that story, and maybe if I invested some time and effort in it, I could make it happen. So I had a certain amount of savings, and I quit my programming job, and this would be about 82 or so, 83. And I was highly influenced by a Ray Bradbury essay. I love Bradbury's stories, but this essay had a big effect too. It was called Zen and the Art of Writing. I think it's still in print. And it was written in, I don't know, the 50s or the early 60s, but Bradbury was kind of pre-Malcolm Gladwell with his 10,000 hours of practice. And the Bradbury's essay was, I want you to write a story per week. And your first story is going to suck, and the next one's going to suck a little less, and then by the end of the year, you'll be surprised how much you've improved. So I adapted that, and I did. I wrote a story a week, and they're all in a box in the basement. I haven't looked at them since about 1983. And I just came across the box the other day, and I said, do I dare open this? I don't know, maybe I'll wait a little longer. It's only been like 40 years, you know.
Right.
So,
not like that
yeah, the pain is still too close. So anyhow, I wrote a story a week, and and then I remembered Heinlein's famous maxim. He had 3 rules for becoming a writer. You must write, that's obvious. You must send out your story, and you must, you must send out your story and send it out, you know, after the first failure. And I think he said, which is probably the most dubious thing, he said you must resist the desire to revise your story unless an editor asks you, because that's a trap that a lot of people fall in. Like, I've got this one magnum opus and I'll keep tinkering with it forever. So anyhow, yeah, exactly. So keeping that in mind, all of those 52 stories spent a lot of time in the mail, back and forth, you know, FNSF and analog, and then, of course, you know, if I thought I had one that was really great, you'd send it to Playboy, hoping Alice Turner would buy it. I think she was editor at that time. But in any case,
pay real money.
Those stories, yeah, they real money. Those stories circulated in the mail for ages, and never sold a one. But I'll be damned, Bradbury was correct. At the end of that year, I was a much better writer. And my savings ran out. I had to go get various day jobs, but I kept writing in my spare time, and pretty soon I started to sell. So it was all credit to Mr. Bradbury. He had the formula down.
There you go. Do you remember what you published under the name Philip Lawson?
Sure, absolutely. So Mike Bishop.
I thought it was
Michael.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Michael Bishop, his full name. Mike Bishop became a dear friend over many years. We actually started contributing to the same fanzines back like in the 70s. And we struck up a pretty good friendship. And I'll say this now because Michael, God bless his soul, he died just about a year ago. I think it was November last year, and he had a very rough passage. I won't get into the medical specifics, but Michael, at one point, he had written his great Frankenstein baseball book, Brittle Innings.
Oh, I've got that. I love that book. I love that book.
Yeah, Brittle Innings, and he got a big chunk of change as a movie option. They never filmed it, obviously, or we'd all be maybe raving or cursing about the film version. But that money actually, and this has happened before, that money actually had a psychological effect on him. It kind of either he
paralyzed him.
Yeah, either
as a writer,
Either he was frozen, like how can I duplicate this success,
right.
or else he got a little lazy, like hey, I can coast for a while on this dough. So I was, we were exchanging weekly letters at that point. This is all pre-internet or the very early. There probably no internet. We might have had email, but we were exchanging letters, and he said, "Man, I just can't get going on anything." And I said, "Mike, I've always wanted to write a mystery. You've always wanted to write, a mystery/crime novel. And why don't we collaborate? And that way we can bolster each other, and we'll publish it under a pen name, and then, there won't be any pressure." And he said, "Okay." And so we did it. We back and forth, the manuscript went, and I remember, I'm trying to think now. Yeah, it was actually paper manuscripts going back and forth in the mail. That's how primitive things were. And so we came up with this novel, Would It Kill You to Smile, published under the pen name Philip Lawson. Lawson was, I forget if it was Mike's middle name or a family name, like his mother's maiden name or something, and Philip was derived from DeFilippo. And so we published this book, and it sunk without a trace, although there were a few admirers. And then we switched publishers and published the next book. Now, the next book, we were going to have all the titles be questions. So the first book, obviously, Would It Kill You to Smile? There's a nice, kind of symbolic question-type title. And so we were going to call the next book a famous line from the Wizard of Oz. We were going to call it "What Makes a Muskrat Guard His Musk?" Well, that sank like a lead balloon with the publisher. He said, "I am not publishing a book called What Makes the Muskrat Guard His Musk." So we twisted around to the title Muskrat Courage, which is obviously not a question. So right away, our grand scheme of having this franchise disappeared.
Founded on the Muskrat titles.
Yeah, but at least we didn't call it Muskrat Love, like the bad pop song, So
yeah, I almost mentioned that.
Right. So that book came and went without much glory, and but we thought we did a hell of a fine job, and then they got published as an omnibus under. I think the title was Families Are Murder. That was a small press omnibus of the two novels. And this is one of my big regrets in life, we always had plans for a third one, and it was going to be called Who Wrote My Name on Water? And I think that was, I don't know if Keats, the poet, actually said that, or somebody said it about him, but Mike came up with that title, and we had it roughed out. It was going to involve outsider artists, somebody like Grandma Moses or Howard Finster or somebody like that was going to be at the heart of it. We never really got the plot down to much more specific than that, but he's gone now, and if I were ever to write the novel alone, it wouldn't. I might do it someday. I dream of doing it, but I've got a lot of other projects on the burners now, so it certainly wouldn't have the same collaborative tone that the first two had. But maybe Mike would look down approvingly from wherever he is at this point.
Okay.
All right, that's going to be the end of part one. Like and subscribe, blah, 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 so you don't miss part two, which will be up in the not-too-distant future. And in the meantime, also go to your local Amazon, buy one of Paul's books, and if you don't like it, send it to him, and he will pay you your money back, and tell him I said so. See you next time, gang.